Buen día. Bienvenidos a este seminario auspiciado y operado por la empresa Real ID. Por su comodidad, por favor mantenga cámaras y micrófonos apagados durante el evento. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. The webinar will begin momentarily. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. The webinar will begin momentarily. Por su comodidad, por favor mantenga cámaras y micrófonos apagados durante el evento. En un momento más, comenzaremos. For your convenience, please turn your cameras and microphones off during the webinar. For questions and comments, please use the chat located in the center of the bottom of your screen. We will now start the webinar. Por su comodidad, por favor mantenga cámaras y micrófonos apagados durante el evento. La comunicación queda abierta en el área de chat, ubicada en la parte central inferior de esta plataforma. En este
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
I hear an echo. There I am.
You're good now.
I'm good now. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me, I guess. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to this webinar, to today's webinar on sustainable management and operations. My name is Jorge Duran. I am the chief of the Secretariat for the Inter-American Committee on Ports of the Organization of American States, and it is my pleasure to bid you a warm welcome to today's webinar. I'd like to take this opportunity right now to thank our associate member, RightShip, for partnering with us in this event, as well as our strategic ally, Real ID, our technological provider. Thank you both for supporting this event and making this event happen. I see that we have a wonderful mix of individuals from the English-speaking Caribbean. I see people from Jamaica. I see people from Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, amongst others. I see people from Mexico. I see people from Honduras. I see people from Argentina. I see people from several parts of the hemisphere. Welcome. It is wonderful that you are here. What we have to present today, or rather what our speakers have to present today, is indeed of the utmost importance, not only to our profession and our jobs, but indeed, I'm going to sound a little overdramatic, to the world. We are here, and today we have several experts that are going to speak to us. First, I would like to thank and introduce Ms. Monica Blanco from the Dream Team of the SIP Secretariat. Ms. Blanco will be acting, Monica will be acting as a moderator of today's event. And we have, of course, presentations by RightShip Americas, by Mr. Nuno Vanderino, if I did not destroy his last name. Then we will have Mr. Rob Bataloo, who will present on the Caribbean Marine Environment Protection Association, also known as CARIF-MEPA. This is a wonderful industry-led organization of which the SIP is a founding member, designed, as the name implies, to protect the marine environment through sustainable stewardship, and he'll speak more about that. We will have the participation of Mr. Jelle Prince from Piedrova Consulting Group, who will speak about the attributes and the advantages and at some point requirements of conducting sustainable dredging, environmentally sustainable dredging. And of course, we all know the sustainability part starts with that, with the environmental part, followed by the social, and lastly, the economic. At least this is the way they're doing things nowadays. And lastly, I will take 5 minutes of your time to briefly present and explain the Green Port Guide, as we'd like to call it, which is a guide that's been designed to assist ports that want to become greener. In fact, there are some indications or some tips on how to get international certified. And then the speakers, the presenters will gather again, led by Monica, for a discussion, and then we will wrap this up. Please remember a few things. Number one, your questions. If you have any questions for the speakers, please write them in the chat function of the Zoom. And if we have time, we will certainly get to them. And then the presentations, with the permissions of the speakers, will be uploaded to the SIP portal as part of this webinar's proceedings, along with the recording. So I'm obliged to say that we're all being recorded and that this will be available in the SIP portal, so that you guys don't take pictures of the screen, as sometimes I used to do, trying to get a slide. We will put all the slides in the portal. Monica will be responsible. Good morning to Oscar from the National Port Empresa Nacional Portuarias. We have everybody. Good morning. We have both Latin American and English Caribbean speakers here. I'm very, very glad to have you. With that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Anthony Tio. Anthony Tio, of course, is Vice President for RightShip, and our associate member, who we have been working with for many, many years. And then with the pandemic and this and that, we went apart a little ways, but we are happy to rejoin forces and efforts in order to, continue offer this type of event. So, Anthony, my friend, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. You took the words out of my mouth, and we are very pleased to be back and re-engaging with CIP. And we're very pleased to be part of this webinar for sustainable management for port operations. And I think this is a very good opportunity for like-minded organizations like CARIF-MEPA, PCG, yourselves, CIP, and RightShip, to share and exchange notes on best practices to ensure how ports can operate in a sustainable manner. So I look forward to this webinar session, and I trust all our audience will benefit with some key takeaways. So very pleased and looking forward to all the speakers presenting here. Thank you very much.
Indeed, Anthony, thank you very much. Thank you for your support. I might add that RightShip is one of the members of our jury committee in the Maritime Award of the Americas that was just recently published, and with some outstanding practices, by the way, this year. And then in that Maritime Award, we also recognize women with an exceptional trajectory in the port sector. And this year we had, the winner was Ms. Elvia Bustavino, who's the Secretary General of the Panama Maritime Authority. And an honorable mention went to my good friend, Audrey McNeil from the Port Authority of Jamaica. So congratulations to both of them. That being said, I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm going to start taking notes, and I give the floor to Monica so that she can conduct the rest of the webinar. Thank you, everyone, again, and good morning.
Thank you, Jorge, and thank you, Nuno. Welcome. Welcome to all participants joining us here today. My name is Monica Blanco. I'm a project coordinator at the Inter-American Committee on Ports, and I'm extremely honored to be joining us here today and be sharing screen with such distinguished panelists. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist. His name is Nuno Bendeguinho. Nuno is a business development manager in RightShip Americas with over 18 years of experience in the maritime industry. Before joining RightShip, Nuno worked in several technical and managerial roles, such as class surveyor, HSE coordinator, project manager, station manager, technical manager, and designated person ashore, and had been involved with all milestones of a vessel lifecycle, from new build to ship recycling, passing through operations in different sectors of the maritime industry, from traditional commercial vessels to naval, oil and gas, cruise ships, and super yachts. Nuno has a vast international experience, having worked in several places in Europe, South Asia, and the US. Thank you, Nuno, for joining us here today, and it's a pleasure to have you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica, for your presentation. Let me start sharing my screen. Please let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can. But could you please share it in presentation mode?
Yeah, can you see my main screen?
No, it is still divided.
If I may offer a suggestion, Nuno, what you need to do is you need to quit sharing the screen. You need to first open it up in presentation mode and then share your screen. And that has worked in the past, I hope.
Okay, let me try that again.
I hope if you do it that way, it'll work.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, we can, but we can see your first slide and the second
Oh,
slide.
okay.
Again,
let me
you should open it up and then share the screen. I apologize to the audience.
Yes,
as you know, technology
I'm no longer used to Zoom, use Teams, so this is a little bit challenging for me. Let me try again.
Technology is finicky, and it is sometimes our best friend and our worst enemy all at the same time. So no worries. But like I said, open it up in presentation mode and then share your screen. In the meantime, there's people saying hello from the AGP, from the General Port Administration of Argentina. There you go. Hi, Patricia Persad from the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Patricia. Yolani is here from Honduras as well. We have from the Ministry of Transportation of Chile, bienvenido, Juan San Martin. And everybody else. Well, we have people from the Port Authority of El Salvador as well. that have made themselves known. And I believe you got it, my friend.
Yes.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
We can.
Very good. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so with no further ado, I'll just start. So I'll just start by talking a little bit about RightShip. So RightShip is the world leading third-party maritime and due diligence organization that providing expertise in the global safety, sustainability, and social responsibility best practice. We bring together years of experience with output from analytics and large data sets to provide our safety and environmental scoring system that some of you may be aware of. And therefore also provide recommendations and consulting services based on those tools. So by working with RightShip, clients are supported making decisions in an environment that is constant state of flux, protecting their business from risk. Just to give you a little bit of overview how RightShip started. So as some of you may be aware, in the late 80s and beginning of the 90s, there were several incidents with bulk carriers in the west coast of Australia, where unfortunately more than seafarers lost their lives. Based on that, there was a deep report from the Australian authorities called Ship of Shame, where there were identified several mispractices in that industry, and therefore our two first stakeholders, BHP and Rio Tinto, created RightShip. So we have been in the market for over 20 years. And our third stakeholder, Cargill, also ended up joining, as our stakeholders in 2006. So when it comes to the ESG shipping and how we see this, the importance of ESG, we have seen that ship owners, charters, ports, and terminals globally are under increasing pressure from financial investors, regulators, and other stakeholders to produce a full disclosure on their ESG policies and performance. And therefore, the maritime sector is now compelled to communicate effective strategy in its move to sustainable shipping. ESG risks exist across the value chain of shipping, as we all know, starting from shipbuilding, marine transport, with impact obviously on marine life, emissions during their transport. Also important to mention also the crew welfare and safety. And on the life cycle, obviously ends up with the ship breaking and ship recycling that also has some impacts on the environmental and on the social aspects of ESG. When, for example, we see many stakeholders starting to bring this to the table. In the screen, you just can see some of big companies, their opinions about ESG. I will not go over that. But we see that, for example, the need of shipping within the maritime is obviously decarbonized in a well document and extensively discussion with clear goal settings by IMO and other regulatory bodies. Equally, there is great awareness of the importance of crew welfare, including safety, decent living and working conditions, medical care, medical well-being, among as for ESG. Shipping sector has the opportunity to capitalize on these trends, clear through unfolding human rights, and catalyze real change by contributing to a global sustainable goals. This requires responsible governance, obviously, that effectively oversees the implementation of measures and under E and S on the ESG pillars. Going forward, ESG will both complement and reinforce each and other responsibility towards the environment and seafarers increases. When it comes to standards and reporting framework, there is a number of frameworks and standards for ESG. We have seen a few of them. You can see a few on my slide deck. For example, we have the GR Global Reporting Initiative that is more focused on impact and addresses a broad range of stakeholders, as well as the UN, the CSG, also broad blueprints aim to achieve a sustainable future for all. But you also have a few more specific for industry, different sectors like ESSB, Marine Standard, that is specific for focus on information needs, and also, for example, the good international industry practices that are subdivided by industry sectors, where you can find, for example, specific guidelines for shipping, port and terminals, and so on. So with all that, obviously we see challenges with implementation of ESG. We have now moved away from asking what is ESG, asking what does ESG readiness looks like. Some other questions that arise that a sector move to adopting and recognize ESG are: there is a growing list of challenges and questions as shipping positions itself for meaningful impact through ESG, among others. What does ESG readiness looks like? What is the basis of comparing on ESG factors? Who will bear the cost of upgrading vessels, ensuring compliance with ESG elements? How should we rate vessels or ship owners ESG? Does ESG rating on scoring one stakeholder class disproportionately versus others, right? So this is all questions that we should making at this time, because this will module the ESG implementation as we see it. We are talking that our challenges, but there are also common grounds, right? So it's important that to recognize these common grounds in order to have an inline approach when it comes to ESG. So I'll not get into many details. You can see it on my screen. But when we start talking about environment, social, and governance, they are basic grounds. For example, environmental, everyone is looking at their air emissions, scope 1, 2, and 3, and energy saving, impact of biodiversity, waste management, noise and vibration. Social, obviously, there's always about the human rights, the medical care, adequate conditions for working and training. And when it comes with governance, just a few examples. Obviously, it's always relevant to look at the business ethics and governance compliance, rating for the safety management of human labor rights and policies and whatnot. So we have to recognize that our common grounds and start building and inlining our goals from there. When it comes to challenges, we see that we can actually separate into different groups. Basically, on a high level, looking at the corporative challenges, it can be a business challenge. How will ESG will affect their current business model? What is the ESG strategy versus the ESG goals? Basically, how much versus how can we do it, right? And when we look at also corporate versus governance, right? So there are always the leaders that goes way and beyond the minimum requirements, and they are the followers that are basically following what has been set up either by others or by governance. When you look breaking down to the different sectors, then obviously different sectors will have specific metrics. They will be exposed to different regulatory requirements. Like, for example, within ships, they do have to comply with IMO regulations that, as an example, are enforcing the GHG emissions regulatory for 2023 that has deep impacts on the technology even itself and emissions guiding for a better future. Obviously, different stakeholders will have a different risk exposure, and obviously also a different risk tolerances. And obviously, because they have different risk exposure and tolerances, they also have different priorities when they look into the ESG. So, for example, here, basically linking the ESG and with the financial needs, as we can see, this is a big pusher of this agenda is the financial needs. For example, here we can see an illustration how ESG fits into the financial ecosystem. So basically, corporates look for green, sustainable investments. Banks are keen to ensure sustainable leading. Shareholders demand sustainable practice from companies they invest in. Regulators are increasingly enforcing compliance with ESG frameworks, and institutional investors assess the sustainability factor in each of their portfolio investments. For the maritime sector and within our own framework, RightShip strategy for ESG has been built in the different tools that we provide. For example, the safety score for vessels that covers part of the governance, the sustainability with several projects like our GG rating for vessels, our carbon accounting and maritime emission portal, and also to the crew welfare, to the social pillar of ESG, when we basically look for the well-being of the crew. When we look at our stakeholders, they all have a different interaction within the ESG system. We can see that obviously insurance and financiers will be the big pushers of the ESG strategy. They will be pushing this strategy to ship owners, charters, and port and terminals. And these three stakeholders are also linked together wherever their strategy will end up affecting each other. So for example, if a charter is looking for more sustainable vessels, that will end up affecting the ship owners that will be pushed to have to upgrade or get more sustainable vessels, that end up also affecting port and terminals, since they will be operating in port and terminals, becoming also port and terminals more sustainable. Looking a little bit on our own insights on ESG, starting, for example, on the safety score, that gives an idea of the risk of operations on safety for the different vessels. One of the services that we provide is actually vetting. So if you look at the vetted vessels versus non-vetted vessels, you can see that the safety score outperforms on vetted vessels, where we have 92% of the vessels with the safety score 3, 4, and 5, against, for example, the vessels where they have roughly only 50% of vessels with score 5, 4, and 3, and with over 43% with score 2. A little bit of insights on the sustainability part with the GG rating. When we start looking on non-vetted versus vetted vessels, there's not a significant change. I remind you, GG rating has been implemented in RightShip a little bit over 10 years ago, but only the big GG agenda only starts driving in 2023 with the new IMO regulations coming into force. But even so, we can see, although there's not a big significant change, we can observe a slightly higher percentage on rate B and C when it's on vetted vessels, and slightly lower on F, that is one of the worst performing vessels in the GG rating. This percentage of the unknown of vetted vessels is also lower, obviously, on the vetted vessels, since many of our clients, they do require the GG rate to be verified. The reasons for this, it can be many reasons why we see this. GG may be also related not only with the charters and starting to include GG rating verification, like I mentioned, but some of them are even imposing their own minimum GG ratings whenever they chart vessels. That also indirectly ends up affecting the GG rating. But where actually to start, right? So some of you may start asking, especially the folks from port and terminals, they can start, where can you start? So obviously that's the reason. We cannot improve what we don't know, and that's why RightShip is trying to build tools to empower clients to make proper decisions. So for example, as you may understand, gas emissions will be an extremely important for the complete supply chain, including port and terminals. So before we set specific metrics, we must understand where we are. We in RightShip have seen numerous times where clients setting up strategy SQ goals like decarbonization are obviously emission reductions. And in order to set successful metrics and goals, one needs to understand where they are and empowered with the right information to make good decisions. So for example, on my screen, it's one of our latest tools specifically dedicated for MEP, for port and terminals, that we call MEP, Maritime Emission Portal, that basically will empower our clients to have the right data and the right information in order to make a proper decision and setting of ESG goals. Just wrapping up a little bit, I trust you have found this presentation today insightful and give you food for thought. At RightShip, we have a growing ESG practice, and we recognize there are variety of risks that appear throughout the maritime value chain. We expect to see, in the near future, ESG will be a key part of sustainable management operations, especially when it comes to metrics on sustainability, more ESG-focused regulation in the area of shipping, a broader appreciation of the consequences and risks as a result of ESG. ESG is the new metric for growth and investment. Continues to evolve at speed, as we all have seen. The increasing trend in sustainability is influencing decision along with more regulations. ESG performance and reporting will be linked to the industry specific risks such as detention, pollution, and abandonment of seafarers. Shipping supply chain now needs to communicate and engage with an effective strategy towards sustainable shipping. So and finally, ESG needs more than standardization and transparency. We only reduce and improve what we can measure. Thank you so much for this time, and I'll be looking forward for your questions.
Thank you so much, Nuno. It was a pleasure to have you. I'm looking forward to continue discussing more about the ESG strategies and the challenges in our Q&A session. And just a reminder for all participants that you can send us your questions through the chat, and we will be more than happy to address them in the session. And now our next panelist is Captain Rob Bataloo. Captain Bataloo has been working in the maritime sector since 1967. He was trained in the British Merchant Navy on Texaco tankers, starting as a cadet and leaving as a master mariner. He's a pointedly fast pioneer, having worked there for 28 years before retiring as president. Captain Bataloo is a past president and honorary member of the Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean Shipping Association. He is also a fellow of the Nautical Institute and the local branch founder, and has chaired the National Maritime Industry Development Committee for a number of years. Captain Bataloo is the current co-leader of the Caribbean Marine Environment Protection Association and continues to mentor young people in the maritime careers. He's also Director at Large of the American Caribbean Maritime Foundation. Thank you, Rolly, for joining us here today, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. As usual, we have Murphy playing, and my presentation has just disappeared off my screen.
Oh.
So can you pull it up, Monica?
Yes, of course.
Yes, my dear friend, we will be happy to run that presentation for you. Monica's currently opening it in her computer. What we'll do is we'll just have her share her screen directly, and then once you see the presentation on the screen rolling, go ahead.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, great. Are you all hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm seeing the screen. Okay, are you all hearing me? Monica, are you hearing me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, the mission of the CARIMAPA, and let me thank you all very much for this opportunity, particularly our viewers. The mission of the CARIMAPA is preserving the marine environment by promoting sustainable marine industry best practices and educating the public a solution to Caribbean pollution. I know one of the questions will always be, why it is that we having another body coming in to do this? And the purpose of CARIMEPA is to assist. We are not going to take over anybody's job. The problem we have is that when one goes to work, he gets so embroiled in the day-to-day activities that trying to get legislation in place and trying to get the approvals and trying to accede IMO conventions, they just don't have the time. I seem to have lost the presentation, Monica. You wanna have a go again?
Yes, let me try again. Apologies.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let me see something.
Okay, you just did it.
Okay, it's there. All right. Okay. So we're moving around. This picture you see in there is really a picture of all right. I seem to have control of it now, so we seem to be okay.
Yes.
All right. The picture I just showed you there is a picture really showing all the shipping lines. And if you look over to the west, is really the area we are talking about. That's your left-hand side. You see how busy the Caribbean is. You see how around the Americas it's very, very busy. So of course that means we're exposed to a lot of shipping. And the value of the industry in the region, right? We look out, and shipping looks after 90% of all global trade. It's a 14 trillion industry, over 100,000 ships, over 100 GT. The average lifespan of a ship, of course, that varies. It's around 21 years, and the total value of the world fleet, this goes back to 2090 figures, is 1 trillion. Sea transport is one of the least environmental damaging modes of transport, and when compared to land-based industries. However, we must be very aware that the shipping people, the shipping lines are all working assiduously to reduce the environmental impact. We know shipping is regulated by the IMO in London, and one of the main things regulating shipping, particularly to do with the protection of the marine environment, is the IMO Convention on the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, MARPOL, and its annexes. Now, IMO puts the regulations in place. The safety and environmental protection rests with the flag states, the Bahamas, the Cayman Islands, the Jamaica, the Dominica, the Panamas, etc. Flag state enforces through port state control. I think we are aware of a port state control memorandum of understanding between all of the wider Caribbean. Port state controls the ships when they come into port. And if you've signed up to the IMO and to the MARPOL Convention and you have it fully implemented and you're participating in the MOU, a port state controller officer has the power to detain foreign ships in port that do not conform to international standards, but that has to be if the regulatory implement is fully implemented. Now, this is some sad news. 86% of the countries in the Caribbean have ratified MARPOL, but only 25% of these countries have fully implemented it, which means the Caribbean is very vulnerable to environmental pollution and therefore economic loss. During normal times, and I'm saying normal times, I really mean pre-COVID, when you look at these figures, 80 cents in the dollar comes from tourism, $700,000 jobs directly, 2.2 million jobs indirectly. In 2019, the Caribbean GDP was USD 58.9 billion due to tourism. So we see environmental, social, and economic impacts of the marine pollution. This has been well documented, and if anything happens, those numbers above will no longer be there. Quickly looking at MARPOL compliance slide, let's look at the bottom part, the ship generated, and particularly the lowest part, the port level, the port authorities and port regulations. If for some reason your country has not signed up and fully implemented MARPOL, there is a way out. port authorities can put into their rules and regulations ways to protect the environment. This is very, very important, but we're hoping that we can quickly get moving to have ports moving and countries to fully implement MARPOL. These are just numbers of what happened with the BP oil spill. The Gulf ship fishing and tourism was very badly affected. The amount of petroleum entering the marine environment annually is about 1 million metric tons. MARPOL is credited with making a substantial contribution, but it's still not enough because we need more people to comply. Again, some sad news, only 15% of the wastewater entering the Caribbean Sea and the wider Caribbean is not treated, which means it is very harmful to the reefs and marine life, and it's very dangerous for people who want to go swimming and snorkeling and enjoying our pristine waters, which, as you can see, is not so pristine. According to a study in 2017, if you look at the slides on the pictures on the right, that's an ocean that's totally covered with pollution. And you see what happens to the coral reefs. They are bleached, they're dead. So they die, and so profits to be made for tourism will disappear. Korea had some massive rainfall, marine litter washed up. It resulted in up to 38 million loss of revenue due to low tourism. And that happens a lot in our islands with heavy rains, particularly in South America with the very, very big rivers. We have problems when all of this washes whatever has been happening in the hinterland into the ocean. In Orange County in California, they did a study and they showed that a 75% litter reduction at 6 popular beaches generated more than 52 million in benefits to the Orange County residents in 3 months. So we've got to do something to clean up our beaches. Going back to that number, 86 of the wider Caribbean, 86%, they have ratified, but only 25% is fully implemented. So the Caribbean is very, very vulnerable. A quick example is there was a Greek vessel passing through the region polluting. Because of lack of legislation, nothing could have been done about the ship. The ship eventually got to the US, where the US, because they've got their rules and regulations in place, they were charged and the vessel was eventually fined and whatnot. But all the pollution was done in the region, no benefits to the region in terms of the fines. And these are pictures we don't want to see. Dirty, oily water, very, very dirty beaches, oil washing up and ships polluting. Thankfully now with new air regulations, that is changing. So there's a lack of legislation and to enforce MARPOL, and this was in a 2017 conference in May of 2017. The need to engage in advocacy efforts. MARPOL is important for sustainability and resilience. We must develop partnerships, which you will see as we go along. Training and education is a critical element, and we need to eliminate the barriers to implementation. And this is where CARIMEPA comes in. Now, what does CARIMEPA have to offer? We will be a consolidator and are for marine environment issues and actions in the region. We're an umbrella for engaging industry, regulators, governments, conservation groups, educators, and more in protecting the environment. We'll act as a focal point for facilitating the implementation of MARPOL, and we'll educate the public about protecting the marine environment. And this is the structure of MARPOL, an association of associations. NAMIPA, which is the North American Environmental Protection Association, CIPOS, who's hosting today, American Salvage Association, RSC Rempetech, Caribbean Shipping Association, Cruise Line Shipping, Port Management Association of the Caribbean, MTCC, which has been doing a lot of work collecting information for air pollution, the Caribbean Maritime University, the Central American Commission on Maritime Transportation, and Women in Maritime Association. We are pursuing further assistance with the American Salvage Association. They haven't changed leadership recently. We are now having to restart some discussions with them. We work towards supporting the protection of the Caribbean marine environment through MARPOL and other tools. So we'll facilitate development of legislation strategies. We are looking at establishing a MARPOL training academy at one of the regional universities where we're going to do training to encourage young people to get involved in more of the regulatory aspects of this, facilitate a potentially polluting REC prioritization, participate in development of regional waste compliance, and educate the public in beach cleanups, etc. Now, MARPL introductive webinars we've had and we want to restart. There's an increase in shipping, so therefore there's an increase in environmental pressures. MARPL ratification is incomplete, as we mentioned before. We need to eliminate these barriers and identify specific implementation and enforcement challenges. We know one size will not fit all, but we certainly want to get a model in operation. So we're going to introduce a topic with webinars very similar to this, using Hudson Analytic and OAS-CIP, prioritizing specific topics and identifying matters at interactive workshop demands. You'll be short seminars, 90 minutes, no cost, and facilitated by world-class experts. And the speakers will have experience in regulatory, legal, and industry. And this, we will be showcasing regionally success stories so that we will see that it works. Now, this is a very worrying thing. We've got over 300 known large wrecks in the region. These wrecks are over 50 years old, which means that they are ready, if not they are not already starting bubbling up. It's not just fuel we're talking about other hazardous materials. When you look at the region, 70% of the population lives, people live along the coast, supporting 50% of the income. You're talking about up to a 74 billion tourism economy at stake here. And we are going to immediately, starting at the CSA meeting in October this year, we're going to start moving along this path to see what can be quickly done on these wreck risks. And the CRISC, which is the Caribbean Risk Analysis, shows we've got to provide rigorous means to identify the wrecks because there are very many jurisdictions, prioritize, quantify impacts, identify the sensitive ecological and socioeconomic resources, and do an overall risk assessment to allow for the local and regional stakeholder involvement. Now, this is how waste management was handled in the past. This is a no-no. Trucks just pouring it into wasteland, and you see what happens at the bottom, and very, very small filtering systems. This is what we want to have. We want to have some well put together strategies, labs, testing, so we know what we're getting, we know what is being released. Waste management strategies, we're looking at feedstock from municipal waste. The offtake will be electric energy that can be provided, that can be produced. The number of hectares on the information will be decided, and the cost and where the funds are going to come from will be worked out. And these are the waste streams: municipal solid waste, industrial waste, tires, medical waste, auto fluff, construction waste, biomass, mixed brush, electronic waste. We're not going to deal with grass or other high moisture waste because there are other ways to handle that. What will happen is reduce landfilling, producing renewable clean energy, creation of new jobs, a landfill to continue but at a reduced level, and landfill materials not suitable for gasification technology will be landfilled in a different fashion. Educate is a very important part for us. Advocate, educate, and activate, three of our watchwords. And these are documents which are going out to schools. NAMIPA has been putting it out. CARIMEPA is now getting involved. In partnership with NOA, it's available in English and Spanish. The K-12 lessons learned, aligned to the NGSS, and we go deep into the debris, waste to reduce debris, data collection. The literature, as you see, is available in English and Spanish. Again, going on with more literature and Educators' Guide to the Marine Environment, we align to the NGSS, and these are lessons on ocean health, ocean acidification, ocean exploration, and the marine industry. And we'll be inspiring students to take action, and it's very, very encouraging when you see the young people, how they are really getting involved in these things. Further, the Marine Industry Learning Guide, foster an appreciation for the marine industry and community. And simple questions. Do you know where your litter is? When you go through these flyers and brochures, you'll see how long it takes a cigarette butt to disappear. And this has been done in partnership with the US Coast Guard and regional Coast Guards and the CIP OAS. A visual representation of decomposition rates and the ways to take action. Something simple as a cigarette butt. And these are young kids in the region, in the US. They have a lot of fun at these gathering, getting together. Various non-governmental agencies are involved, as well as government agencies doing beach cleanups. School programs, essays, teaching the kids what to do, making them understand. And of course, kids are the best way to teach the seniors. We older ones are responsible for where we are now. And the young kids are taking up that and reminding us, let's do it right. We're going to assist seafarers and shoreside personnel to better understand MARPL. And this is one of the key tools that we are going to be using for effective environmental compliance when we establish the MARPL Institute in the region. Capacity building resources will come from the Caribbean Development Bank, the US Department of Justice on MARPL penalties, Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, foundations, reverse funding using the carbon trade and others. This was done in 2019, where we signed the MOU, the Caribbean Shipping Association, and the CARIMEPA, together with some other players in the region who you all may make out some of them there. So are you interested in strategies to protect the welfare of your people, your marine environment, and your country's revenue? I think you can look to CARIMEPA for that. Join us. The form is on our website, and we would appreciate members joining. We need to get the conversation going. We need to get the wheel rolling again. These are some of the players right now. We want you to bear in mind our three watchwords: education, advocate, and activate. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raleigh. It was so interesting to learn and see all aspects of CARIMEPA and how it is creating awareness on different environmental issues. Thank you so much. And another reminder to all of our participants, the presentations will be available on the SIP portal, and you will find the link in the chat. Now, I would like to introduce our last but not least panelist. His name is Jelle Prince. Jelle is a founding partner of Piedrova Consulting Group. Mr. Prince's business development efforts have allowed PCG to successfully engage in contracts with both public and private entities. As a consultant, he specializes in strategic planning, CapEx, OpEx control, contract procurement, and construction administration. Mr. Prince has worked on numerous cruise developments, representing a portfolio exceeding $1 billion in total project CapEx, and developed through understanding of local and regional cruise markets. He's an instructor for the classes and executive seminars PCG hosts through its partnership with the Organization of American States, and has also been contracted by the World Bank on various projects. Thank you, Jelle, for joining us here today. We are excited to have you, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Buenos dias a todos. What an excellent presentation by Mr. Bataloo. That was very, very crisp and clean. My name is Jelle Prince. I'm with Piedrova Consulting Group. We manage marine infrastructure projects, specifically those with a dredging component. And today I will talk a little bit about sustainable dredging and sustainable dredging projects. I'll keep it modestly brief because I know some of us might be getting ready for lunch, and we have a long day ahead of us. Piedrova Consulting Group is a company I have with my partner, Luis Prieto y Munoz, who's unfortunately not here today. But I'll dive straight into the presentation here as okay, here we go. Why are we dredging? What is the purpose of dredging? Dredging typically has somewhat of a negative connotation. A lot of folks, when they think about dredging in the environment, they think about the negative impact that dredging might have on the environment. But as Mr. Bataloo just explained in his presentation, dredging can sometimes actually improve the environment, like in the case with the BP oil spill, or when there's environmental remediation. half of the world lives within 80 kilometers of a coastal area or on the ocean. So dredging is quite essential to preserving marine life, but also the safety of the people that live on our planet. As Jorge knows, I grew up in the Netherlands. Half of my country is below the level of the sea. If we didn't have dredging, my country wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be there. So dredging is pretty important in maintaining a sustainable lifestyle to begin with. It supports trades, commerce, housing. It provides coastal protection. It really helps us deal with this major issue that we're facing in attacking the climate change and the impacts of climate change. The goals of dredging are to deal with navigation, to improve, to build cleaner ports, to build land reclamation projects, to do beach nourishments, to do offshore wind energy projects, to work with mining. There are many, many elements where dredging actually helps improve the environment. And therefore, part of what we're trying to tell as an industry is think about the positive impacts as much as the negative impacts, because there's a lot that dredging can do to create sustainability. In this presentation, I'll tackle two things. One is, what is a sustainable dredging project? And the other part is, how do we do it? When we talk about dredging, we think about, and I'm trying to quickly remove this as it's blocking my presentation a little bit. When we think about dredging, a sustainable dredging project is defined as dredging in harmony with the environment and within the limits of the ecosystem, not changing the nature of the interactions between organisms. Sustainable dredging equipment is defined as the environmental footprint of equipment needs to be minimized. In practice, this means minimizing the harmful exhaust gas emissions, turbidity, and sound emissions. A sustainable dredging project is typically one where the concept, the design phase, the procurement phase, and the actual delivery, the construction, are integrated as a whole. Whereas sustainable dredging equipment is defined as equipment that is new, modern, with low emissions, and it actually is being driven by a promotion of innovation through legislation. If we have projects that support dredges with a green passport, that means that our projects will be built in a more sustainable way. Especially when we talk about the Caribbean and the pristine environment that we have around us. The ambition is to achieve dredging projects that, number one, serve their purpose and add value to the system, but also to proactively engage the stakeholders and those that are perhaps impacted in a negative way by a dredging project. They have to do what they're supposed to do. They have to improve the situation and create benefits to those benefiting from a dredging project. And they have to be inclusive. Everybody that is, whether you live near a port or whether you're somehow impacted by a dredging project, you have to have your say. And that's where we say that a sustainable dredging project is a project where everybody's voice is heard. A sustainable dredging project is also a project where we have an integrated approach, where there's awareness, where the client, the owner, the developer of the port, the contractors, the ecologists, those working on the EIA, regulators, they're all on the same page. And you do that by being involved in preparing a project from the early stages. A dredging project is best handled when you attack and apportion and allocate and manage the risks, especially the environmental risks, early on. You see here, and this is a similar figure as was being used by one of the previous presenters, whenever you try to have awareness and match the social, environmental, and economic benefits of a project, and you have the awareness to match them all together, the sweet spot is truly sustainability. And that's what a sustainable dredging project can achieve that, but it's best to prepare at an early stage. It's easier to prevent than to fix and patch something that you did wrong initially. So how do we dredge in a sustainable way? Well, we're building with nature. We work with nature, not against it. We include natural features in the design of a dredging project. We are also optimizing the benefits of a project. Building with nature is a philosophy. It talks about how can we work with nature and the features of the nature and the environment and not against it. Another element of how we dredge in a sustainable way is through using the dredge sediments beneficially. A dredge sediment that you dig from your channel is not necessarily waste. It can be a resource. It can do things like reclaim lands. It can recreate marshlands. There's a lot of things that you can do with dredged material to actually improve the environment. Often it's considered, especially when you dispose offshore or near shore or on land, we discuss the impact of the project, but very often there is a beneficial use of the materials that you dredge. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here, but it's a very important element. For example, when we re-nourish our beaches, or we provide coastal protection, or we create environmental habitats. Data selection is always essential to a dredging project, because if you know what you know, then you can manage the risks, especially the environmental risks of a project in a more optimal way than without knowing the environment. And so a lot of the focus that we have as a company when we manage dredging projects is making sure that we conduct the right environmental baseline studies, that we do a good geotechnical analysis, that we do the right site investigations, the right bathymetry, because if you know what's in the ground and what the environment is, then you can prepare to improve that environment. Then when we look at the execution phase, we're going to look a little bit more at the thoroughness of environmental monitoring. How do you measure turbidity? What is your compliance strategy? How do you enforce it? Are there liquidated damages in your contract? Selecting the contractor that can build the project in a sustainable way is also important. You want to have a competition of innovation, of ideas, and not just price. Price is important because we all have budgets and we all have limitations as far as how much we can pay for a dredging project. But at the same time, it's very important to have a holistic, organic, integrated approach to project delivery. And then, of course, we want to support and promote investments in modern dredging equipment. The average age of an American dredge is about 35 years, whereas if you look at the world market, the dredges have an average age of about 11 years. So if the world market as a whole promotes investments, CapEx investments in new equipment that have lower emissions, then you'll see dredging projects getting built in a more sustainable way. This graph shows a little bit what a traditional project development and implementation would bring. And the green graph here shows what a sustainable dredging project would yield. And you see that if you start early here, that the end result here is a lot more generation of success of environmental and societal project implementation. So the risk, especially the environmental risk, is managed here in the initiation phase of a project. And as you get through the planning and the design and the construction, and eventually the operation and maintenance phases, you see that you're going to yield the benefits of all the pre-work you did there. Here on the left, you see a couple old dredges from about 100 years old. This is the dredge here on the bottom that was used to dredge the Panama Canal. And on the right, you see the modern dredges that are being used in today's industry. Coincidentally, they're obviously making the dredges green to make it look like they're a lot greener, but they actually are. There's a lot lower emissions. They're a lot more productive, which means that projects get built in a reduced time frame, which means that there's less environmental impact. And you also have quite a few LNG dredges in today's market. All right. The environmental impact assessment is a critical element to a project, considered a legal requirement placed on a development to measure the impact and nature of the proposed development. It's really the tool that regulators throughout the Americas, throughout the world, throughout the Caribbean use to hold a developer accountable. It links the environment with sustainability. What we find, though, is that in a lot of ways, in a lot of countries, the EIA departments of environments are a little bit underfunded. And you see outdated terms of references where sometimes the restrictions being put on contractors, on developers, are considered fair, but a little bit outdated. And I think there's a lot more we can do here to improve the environment by not also focusing on mitigating the environmental risk and potential negative impacts, but also encouraging and promoting what an environmental benefit might look like for a project and how can we implement it? How can we do that in a holistic way? What is the net benefit of a project? An EIA needs to properly identify the risk and then offer sustainable mitigation methods for those risks. The developer, when they're building a project, has to really show and say, hey, you know what, this is going to be an environmental impact of our project, but this is how we're going to attack that, and this is how we're going to mitigate that risk. Key is also to consult with the stakeholders. Public consultations are a critical part of environmental impact assessments, and it's very important to make sure that all groups, fisheries, people that work at the port are heard so that you can consider their opinions and they can have a voice and say in the project that impacts their environment and the place where they live and work. And so a lot of the things that we're trying to do here with an EIA is to fine tune and really optimize the link between environmental mitigation and project delivery through the capabilities of the marine contractor. Because at the end of the day, it's the marine contractor that has to build your project. Here we'll see a few quick impacts that you typically see on a dredging project: dredge disposal, turbidity, and the impact on marine life. When we talk about dredge disposal, we already discussed the beneficial use of dredge materials. You can create beaches, marshlands. There's a lot of things that you can do coastal protection-wise to make sure that environmental habitats are actually protected. Turbidity is controlled through turbidity measurement and curtains here on the bottom left. You see here how you can control the outflow of a dredging project. It's very important to make sure that's adequately addressed in your project. And then the impact on marine life. It's an environmental risk on a project that is typically mitigated through limiting the hours that a dredge can operate, the days a dredge can operate, and also how it operates. Here are some other benefits of what a dredging project can do for you. Many dredging projects are environmental cleanup projects, actually, where we remove contaminated sediments from the dredge prism, especially in the 80s and 70s when there was a lot of heavy production industrialized going on in the world. A lot of factories, a lot of production changed, contaminated the waters near the production process. And now we're seeing a lot of those projects address cleaning up the contamination that was generated by those production processes. Dredging promotes clean energy. You see here how a dredge is working on an offshore wind project. And here you see on the bottom right a coastal protection project where we're trying to protect the environment by preventing rather than repairing in the case, let's say, a hurricane happens. These are the United Nations development goals, and you actually see that a lot of those goals apply to dredging. Number 7, affordable and clean energy. Number 9, industry and innovation of infrastructure, as well as number 11, 13, and 14 all apply directly to dredging. What do contractors do to support that? Well, here you see a couple tools on the bottom. A plume guard is an asset developed by a dredging contractor to protect the environment from turbidity. Fauna guard is a tool developed by a dredging contractor to protect endangered species. And then they developed a reef guard element that helps with the protection of coral reefs. In our industry, there's so much investment in dredges that these dredging contractors for hundreds of years, they're the ones that are really used to working in these sensitive environmental habitats. So what we typically like to do is put as much risk on the dredging contractor because they're often best positioned to mitigate environmental risk on a project and make sure that promotion of sustainability is guaranteed. Here you see a little bit about what a clean port would look like. These are the goals as developed by the United Nations when it comes to promoting sustainability on ports. How do you get a clean port? Ports are obviously at the hub of our blue and circular economy. So it's very important that a right implementation, especially as ports get bigger, are considered to promote sustainable development throughout their projects. And here you see, to close, how historically, you learn from 1996 to 2020, how, for example, dredging disposal here was a priority, and it was really focused on here, and as number 4, you see dredging operations. And in the beginning, or 30 years ago, you would see that there was a lot of focus on what is the negative impact of a dredging project, whereas here in today's world, they're almost outside the top 10 here, but climate change and energy efficiency and air quality are a priority. And funny enough, dredging supports all those elements. So you see that the perception is changing a little bit from what is the negative impact of dredging to what can we do for you to promote sustainability. That's the presentation. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jelly. Thank you for sharing on the importance and implementation of sustainable dredging. I would like to continue the conversation in the Q&A session, but first we will have a brief presentation of the SIP Green Guide for Ports from the Chief of the Secretariat, Jorge. Jorge? Oh, okay. He's having some technical difficulties. Okay. Apologies, just a moment.
Bueno.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, you can't see me yet. Let me see. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know.
I have here that your camera is on. Okay.
There we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Okay. Thank you very much. Can you hear me and see me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Monica, please tell me if you are, in fact, seeing my screen here. What? To allow Shum to share your screen. Oh man, it's doing things that it hasn't done before on this Zoom today. This is a second update that it's doing. I apologize for that. It won't let me share my screen. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you what, while I fix this technical problem here, and I can always just sort of join in and do this short, because I don't want to keep the audience or our guests waiting while I fix this technical issue. Why don't you go ahead, Monica, and begin the dialogue there. I know that we have some interesting questions for some of our speakers, and perhaps you can ask, the first one over there, and I'm going to try to fix this and get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jorge. I would like to invite our panelists back on the screen. If you could please join me. Thank you. Now let's start with our Q&A session. The first question goes to Nuno. For whoever that didn't start or is just starting their ESG journey, what would you say is the first strategic step to set a successful ESG strategy?
Well, thank you, Monica. Very, very good question. So I would say in being RightShip, we believe we cannot improve what we don't know, right? So in order to set a successfully achieve metric and goals, one needs to understand where they are and be empowered with the right information and tools to make good decisions. It's also important to mention that it needs to be transparent and understand that the ESG journey is not done alone or in silos. And in order to have a meaningful impact, data sharing and partnership are definitely very important and part of the ESG journey.
Perfect. Thank you, Nuno.
I think I got it now.
Okay.
My camera doesn't seem to be on. There we go. Okay, now I think I got it. Please watch. I don't expect to take long. All right, it looks like it's working now. You must tell me what you see.
I think it is starting to share.
Yeah. Do you see something that says activities?
It says that you are starting to share your screen, but I can't see your screen. Maybe we could do it after the Q&A session. Oh, okay.
I don't know what's going on. Yes, please continue. I'm going to try and fix this because I do want to show our audience that the guide, the marine guide the educator's guide to marine debris that Roll spoke about is available on our portal in English and Spanish. And there is also some information directly linking them to Brightship and so forth. But if you can't see, you still can't see my screen, right?
Yeah,
No, it's
we
on.
can see it now. We can see it now.
Oh, wonderful. Well, as you can see, here is this information on both Rightship and then the guides that Raul was speaking of. And of course, this portal has the English and Spanish. I'm going to disappear this tab. Tell me that you saw it disappear and that something else is appearing on your screen now. In any case, I wanted to show you that I had all the path worked out here, but I think my comment, there we go. All right. You should be looking at the Sustainable Port Management and Environmental tag.
Yes.
On the screen from the SIP portal. This tag is currently chaired by Mexico. And if you go into the Documents tab here on the left, what you will see is this. You will go into a part that has three documents at the moment. Energy efficient ports. It's a study in trends and best practices for energy efficient container patios. Then you have a best practice compilation, and then you have the guide for environmental certification and preparation. If you click on that guide, this is where it'll take you. The guide itself is here. You can download the guide or a PowerPoint. What I have done is I have clicked on the PowerPoint guide, so that the PowerPoint presentation of the guide, and I'm just going to very briefly and very quickly go over a couple of key slides. This is a guide that is intended to give the ports the tools and elements that they need in order to improve the environmental management of said port. So it's a guide that tells you different areas, environmentals, organization, management, and so forth, that you will need to move forward. It talks about the ISO 14000, ISO 14001. It speaks of the different types of international certifications that are available. It talks about the different ways of coming up with sustainability reports so that you can be more competitive. It talks about, like I said, it talks about the ISO 14001, and what this makes you is, as we all know, green ports are more competitive than other types of ports. If you are a sustainable, you get competitive advantages and you get more markets, and it's a win for all. Anyway, again, I didn't want to spend more time here. I had selected some slides, but something's funky with my computer, obviously, and it's just being slow and stupid. Like I said, technology, when you need it. So anyway, I will stop here. But I want the audience to know that, again, this guide is this is just a PowerPoint on the guide. The guide itself is a document that accompanies this guide here. And so between the PowerPoint and the document in Word that you can download, you get all the information necessary for you to improve, or at least have some of the tools necessary to improve your sustainable efforts and management of the ports. Again, to the audience, I apologize for some reason the computer is slow today, but you saw where it was. It is in the portal. It is under the tag on sustainable activities, and it's free to download. Take a look at it. Use whatever you think would work for you. And Monica has very gratefully, thank you, Monica, put the link to the guide on the chat. So thank you very much. With that said, and thanking you again for your time and patience, I turn it over back up to Monica to continue with the discussion round. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Okay, let's continue with our Q&A session. Next question is for Rob. What can a port do to reduce its carbon footprint?
Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, I think one of the things I'd recommend is accessing all that beautiful literature that Jorge just talked about, because I think there are a lot of answers in there. But there's simple things that we need to do, for particularly our smaller ports, and little things like your power supply. Are you getting a green power supply? So you need to work towards that. Can you start utilizing solar power? Can you look at the Caribbean is blessed with the Northeast traders that's very, very strong. Can you look at wind farming? Can you look at when simple things again in the port, try and get all your equipment using green electricity. I'm fortunate in Trinidad where we'll soon be producing green methanol. We have natural gas and things like that, but we need to look at whatever we are doing the old way, we've got to change it out, get proper equipment. Most importantly, and something very simply, if you've been in a port, and all of you I think are port people, truckers have a habit of bringing a truck into the port with its engine running, starting in the morning until he leaves. That has to stop. You come, you switch off your engine, do what you have to do, get moving and get out. You can't be putting in all of this carbon into the port. So all the equipment you need to get put in place. They're very simple things, and because they're simple, you tend to overlook it. So you need to get everything in the port thinking green. Your people putting your bins in, and the disposal, and being on top of it, and working with your legislators to ensure that legislation is in place. And if it's not in place, ensure that you can get it put in place for your port. Have your people, have your board, have your people work to put it in conditions of use of the port. So in a nutshell, it's a lot of simple things you can do, and I've just mentioned a few, but I must refer you back to what Jorge has been talking about. There's excellent stuff in those publications.
Thank you so much, Roland. And now our next question is for Jelle. Will some of the more modern and environmentally friendly dredges make it to the Americas Caribbean?
Good question. The answer is yes. I was actually just in Netherlands over the summer and had meetings with some of the dredging contractors, and one of them, Van Oord, is building 3 LNG-driven hopper dredges, and one will rotate between West Africa and the Caribbean. So there will be an LNG dredge operating throughout the Caribbean for half of the year onwards. And the NOAA also has an LNG-driven dredge with a green passport that works in Brazil. So the answer is yes.
Thank you, Jelle. Now we have another question for Nuno. Nuno, you mentioned some challenges of implementing ESG throughout the different stakeholders. How do you think these challenges can be overcome?
Well, another very good question. As you may recall from on my presentation, we do acknowledge that the different stakeholders, they do share common grounds on ESG topics. That should be considered the baseline among the different stakeholders. So we believe that the key to success is to have definitely metrics driven by data and having collaboration and transparency to build a strong and robust ecosystem. So what we are seeing now sometimes is that there are several initiatives running in parallel with different agendas and that work in silos. So we need definitely to work together and collaborate more in able to break those silos and achieve successful results.
Yes, I completely agree. Thank you, Nuno. And now we have another question for Roland. In the absence of stringent PSC, can a port implement fines for non-compliance?
Thank you. I alluded a little bit to that in my previous answer. Yes, the port must ensure that it's got rules and regulations to look after its business in the absence of the state having other things. If your country is not fully compliant and they are not part of the MOU, or if the MOU on port state control in the region is not working in a fashion where all vessels above a certain size are being handled, you can put in your port rules and regulations, making it very clear if you want to come to this port, you've got to follow the rules and regulations here. This worked very successful for me when we started building a port from scratch in the 70s. And it's worked well, and we never had any problems. One of the things you have to be a little bit aware of, there is a downside, because if you are putting very strict rules and regulations, and let's say a competitor port is not putting strict rules and regulations, you may lose some traffic, but you leave that up to the marketing people to handle. But yes, in a nutshell, it can be handled, but you've got to make sure you put your rules and regulations and you implement it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Raleigh. We have one last question for Jelle. What are some of the more notable dredging projects planned within our region that will support our port system become more sustainable and greener?
Okay. Well, we are involved in a project in Belize that is really making the national port there a lot greener. It's a multi-purpose project that is improving cargo bulk and cruise. Considered green because it eliminates the current bulk anchoring operation that they have there, and the cruise port is a tender port, so the people have to go on a big ship, and then the cruise vessel goes in front of the coast, anchors, and then smaller boats take the passengers to the mainland, and our port will eliminate that movement. There's other projects in Antioquia, as well as in San Juan, Puerto Rico, that are considered green projects because the net gain will be an environmental benefit. The project's purpose is to welcome cleaner, more modern, bigger vessels. So there's a lot going on in the region and a lot to look forward to.
Thank you, Jelle. And we have one last question from the chat. This question is from Benjamin Ortega of Port St. Martin. He's asking, Raleigh, is there a guide on how much garbage or waste is expected per vessel per capita of a Caribbean country island?
There's no guide. To start with, you're dealing with a range of vessels, very small to very big. Some ships have their own systems. Some time ago, when the IMO was looking at starting off a proper system of port reception facilities, some islands couldn't do it. So some studies were done, but the figures were all skewed. So there is no real guideline one can work by. What I can say is that ships have changed immensely over the years. They are a lot greener in the way they have been operating. The crews are a lot less, so therefore the amount of stuff is less. But I think some of the things we are trying to do now at CaribMEPA as we get going again is to start collecting information. We're going to collect information on MARPOL, wrecks, and disposal of garbage. So those are things that will be happening. But if you have anything, I would love that if you can share it, because it's to all of our benefit. Thanks.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Raleigh. Excuse me to interrupt. I'm going to give this one last chance, if I may. I think I may be lucky this time around in having a better experience than last time. Let me see. Are you guys looking at an orange slide?
Yes.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, well, I was continuing with the guide, and here's the commercial, social, and environmental benefits of being a green port. And obviously, this will be obviously as you move on. But I wanted to focus on these slides, which are sort of the titles of the sections, and again, there's successful experiences. So you're not the first one to do it. There's experiences in all sorts of Latin American and Caribbean ports in becoming green and becoming certified by institutions such as EcoPorts or others. And then there is a bunch of additional resources that you can get from this guide, in addition to all sort of benefits and whatnot. Anyway, I'll stop sharing there. And I just wanted to, sort of complete that presentation for the people here. Again, this guide is available on the portal for free. That's the PowerPoint presentation. Again, the guide itself is a PDF document with a lot of text on it and formats for the sustainability reports and so forth. And if I may offer a comment on what's been happening here, I think that it's very clear that what Roel was talking about earlier, and the question from our friend in the audience, it depends, I guess, if the cruise ship or the maritime vessel unloads their trash, and if you don't have appropriate port reception facilities, then they won't be unloading that trash. And then we're talking about the trash produced by in country, in visit by the people, which varies from country to country. So what a tough question, I think, there for Rolly. But anyway, Monica, back to you. Thank you for letting me show the rest of it.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. And thank you to all of our panelists today. It was an honor to moderate this Q&A session. And of course, learning more about how the port and maritime sector can implement sustainable operations. Thank you again. And Anthony, back to you.
For me? All right, great.
Yes.
So I think Jorge and the rest of the panel of speakers, you've done a fantastic job. And as what Yella emphasized, because of the existential climate change, sustainability is of growing importance, and it's more or less a ticket to trade or to do business, right? All stakeholders, investors are not only looking at P&L, but also looking at sustainability performance indicators. And as what Nuno mentioned, all businesses need to know what are their emissions and have a strategy to mitigate them. And we hope that this session has provided some insights, and I'm sure all of us would be working together to create a greener environment for our children, and of course, a more sustainable port for the maritime sector. Thank you very much. And I think this is my parting words. And we do hope that we have more sessions like this, and we can share more interesting topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
And thank you. I guess it's my turn here to just sort of thank everybody and close up. I think that what RightShip presented today, and thank you very much, Nuno, muito obrigado pela apresentação. You cannot fix what you don't have measured. You need baseline. I think that you drove that point home several times, and that's absolutely right. And it goes along with the green guide that I just presented. You need to start measuring smartly your baselines to see what your progress is. So kudos for that. And then the two other speakers, well, Jelle, my friend, thank you very much. The different types of dredging, the impact that they have in their environment, beyond the sort of competitive advantage that the actual dredging might bring, thinking about the environment, thinking about where to put the material, thinking about all these environmental priorities that sometimes we escapes our mind. So thank you, Jelle, for that very professional presentation. And then, of course, Role from CARIFMEPA, this is, he spoke about the CIP. The CIP is a founding member of CARIFMEPA because it is something that we believe in strongly. I recommend for those of you who have a little more interest to visit our portal to access these resources that are there from the Marine Educator's Guide and so forth in addressing many of the questions, or rather answers to the question, how can a port become green? With the dredging done, with adequate port reception facilities, with adequate either decarbonization or limited there's so many ways that can contribute to making you greener, and a lot of them appear in this guide, and a lot of them were mentioned by our friends here. I encourage everyone to, whether it be directly or through us, if you have questions, if you would like to access either RightShip, Piedrova, or CariMepa, please don't hesitate, throw us an email, and we'd be happy to make that connection for everyone. My friends, as we are winding down, I'll give you the floor once more so you can bid your farewell to this audience that has stuck with us for over an hour and a half, and we'll do it in the order that we do. So Anthony will go first, Nuno, Role, and then Jelle at the end.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you all again, and do reach out to us if you have any questions or you need us to support you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you again, everyone. Gracias a todos.
Thanks very much, everyone. I hope the weather is better where you are. Right now, we're having torrential rain. But thanks very much for your attention. And CariMepa, through CIP or directly, we are available. And we are willing to chat and see if we can help you. The Caribbean, and by extension, all our seas, is where our future will lie. So let's save our seas. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Monica, for being such a grateful and great host once again. Any dredging questions on your reports or anything else, feel free to contact us. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Jelle. And this is the time where 8 minutes behind schedule, so I don't feel bad at all. I think they were well worth it. But I thank our audience for your questions, for your attention. Please, any additional things you want, let us know, and we will try and respond. These webinars that we organize are based on demand by you, by the audience, by the port authorities that send emails saying, Jorge, we need a webinar on this. We would like to be informed more on this, and so forth. So don't be shy. Let us know. Our next event, I believe, is on September 6th. That'll be a Spanish-based event on the use of drones in the ports, both as a protection mechanism from non-authorized intrusions or the uses that the ports give the drones, as well as the drones used by, I don't want to say organized crime, but the delinquents and people who know. So we'll have a very interesting security-based discussion next week. And as you know, we continue to do these webinars based on demand. Everybody, I saw people from everywhere, really of the SIP members, and from Mexico to Argentina, going through Central America and the Caribbean. Everybody was represented. Thank you very much. And again, thank you, our speakers, for giving us your time and your knowledge. So hasta la próxima, amigos. Till the next one. Thank you so much.